Relentlessly trained in multiple forms of hand-to-hand and armed combat, Silver Sable was destined to inherit the command of her father's professional soldier unit, the Wild Pack. Under the auspices of Silver Sable International, she has since transformed them into the ultimate mercenary combat force, now the economic foundation of her beloved homeland, Symkaria. Stan Lee presents Silver Sable and the Wild Pack. Intro theme music right here. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Number One Comics Podcast. This is the only podcast dedicated to first issues. I'm your host, Jonah, and with me again is Bill. I'm going to ask you again, Bill, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Good. I'm going to ask you every time.
That's fine.
All right. Well, again, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
And as indicated in the intro, we are talking about Marvel Comics' publication of Silver Sable and the Wild Pack from June 1992. Cover price, whopping $2. Considering you're getting a lot of cardstock and silver chrome, that's a really good cover price.
Yeah,
in my
I'd
opinion.
say so.
So this was written by Gregory Wright. Artist was Stephen Butler. And Silver Sable is a character that was created by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this book. I want to first talk about the cover. That's something that I don't always do. It's something that I need to remind myself to start doing more often. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you know you're about to read a 90s comic, Bill?
It has Spider-Man on the cover.
For starters, you got Spider-Man.
Right.
You also have something that is thick cardstock and embossed.
Yes.
Yep. It doesn't surprise... I'm actually surprised that it doesn't have the words first collector's issue on it.
Yeah.
Because really it should. As all of these types of issues did. Now, it does say in her own book at last... which begs the question as to who was asking for this.
Yeah. I've always, of course, she's always been kind of a side character. I do know her from the pages of Spider-Man, things like that. But
she was often straight up a villain in Spider-Man books.
I never really thought to myself, man, I really hope she gets her own comic. But, As was the case in the 90s, everyone was getting their own solo. No pun intended.
Yes.
Everyone was getting their own, mini-series or own spin-off series.
Yep.
And the 90s was kind of a free-for-all for this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. She appeared in 1985. In Amazing Spider-Man 265. And yeah, she was a kind of a big Spider-Man antagonist throughout that time. It wasn't really that, 1985 to, what did I say? This was 1992. It wasn't really too long there that she ended up getting her own series. So that's pretty cool. With the cover, one thing that I did want to mention about the cover as well, and I like this cover. I think it's very cool. But we see our titular character. She's dressed in all silver. She's surrounded by an army of Hydra agents. In the background, we see Sandman and Spider-Man. They're posed like they're coming out to get her as well. Like I said, I really like the cover. Even looking at it now, I can see why little Jonah wanted to pick this up like 30 years ago. So very cool cover. Let's go through the issue and give you a synopsis. This will be spoiler filled, but again, we're talking about an issue that's 32 years old at this point, so that's okay. We're going to start out with the title page. The name of this story is called Personal Stakes, and we start out in the small Balkan state called Symkaria. I'm assuming it's Symkaria. It could be Symkaria. I think
it's Symkaria.
Yeah. Symkaria rolls off my tongue a little bit better. Silver Sable is kicking some guy that he looked like my dad back in 1992 with the ponytail and everything. But she's kicking this guy right in the face. And they're both falling from a castle into a moat far down below. Now, through text boxes, we're introduced to Symkaria, we're introduced to Silver Sable, and we're introduced to her mercenary group. They specialize in the apprehension of wanted felons and the recovery of stolen property is sort of their specialty. The two hit the water, and this is when Sable chokes him under the water, and she then leaves him to drown. She climbs out of the water, and she's immediately fired upon by two gunmen out in the woods. She throws a couple of her silver chais at them. Is it chais or chais? Chais?
Chai, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. She throws tea at them.
Yes, chai tea. So she throws her little silver chais at them, and she takes them out. We also see that the guy that she'd left for dead in the moat, he kind of comes out of the water, and he tries to take her from behind while she gives him another kick to the face. Two men drop from trees, but she makes pretty quick work of them as well. The ponytailed assailant, he's not given up yet. He gets back up and he tackles her from behind. He even says, and I quote, "I've always been partial to tackling a woman from behind." Which, that's a really cringy thing to say.
Yeah.
That's such a weird bit of
That gets you
dialogue.
put on a registry today.
She finally puts him down with a knee to the balls, and then she runs off towards a flag across a patch of sand, which turns out to be the Sandman. I kind of, even having seen the cover, I still didn't guess that that's what that was until it was too late for her. But turns out it was all an exercise, and it was more like a tryout for her mercenary group, the Wild Pack. So two of Sable's close confidants, an Uncle Morty and a woman named Lorna, are standing by. Lorna shouts, berating things at the candidates. She sounds like she should be racing Indiana Jones to find the Ark of the Covenant, just in the way that she speaks.
Yeah.
Sable tells Lorna that she wants to keep the one with the ponytail. I don't know if it was the whole tackling from behind that got her, or just the fact that the guy didn't give up.
Yeah.
But she liked something about that guy. His name's Powell. Later in her castle, Sable's getting a massage by the angry German woman. I can only imagine what that feels like. And she's also getting updated on new and existing business opportunities. She turns down a hit, stating that she's not running a murder incorporated. She's still negotiating a fee to find some stolen Norwegian idols. And she's subcontracting out a Mexican cruise line that's been taken over by terrorists to her franchise down in Cancun. So we know that she runs this as a business, and not just a business, it's like a international business that she's franchised out. I'd actually like to learn a bit more about that.
Yeah.
Sable learns that Hydra has seized a girls' prep school dormitory, Toy Soldiers style. Remember that movie? Mm-hmm. Louis Gossett Jr.? Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Sable even has a niece, coincidentally, that's attending that school. No one has offered any money for Sable's services, so she passes on the opportunity. Even when Morty's like, "Hey, it's your niece," and she's like, "We're talking business here, not personal affairs. Like, let's move on." She even goes on to say that her father's dead because he cared, and that's not a mistake that she's willing to make. However, that night, we see that she does, in fact, care as her stealth jet blasts off towards Northampton, Long Island. On her flight, Sable recaps us on her past, including the death of her mother and her father, the Wild Pack hunting down Nazi war criminals until her father was killed by one of them. Uncle Morty and her niece are her only living relatives, she states. Hours later, Sable's cloaked ship arrives at the Cranewood School for Girls. The media has already set up outside. Among the flock of reporters and news crew is none other than Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man. Parker's spidey sense tingles, and he runs off, leaving one of his coworkers behind. Sable drops from her ship onto the roof, where she encounters two Hydra guys. One guard comments, "A woman! Ha! She'll bleed to death at our feet." So while she hoped to infiltrate quietly and without killing, that's not going to be possible. Peter Parker's changing into a Spidey costume. He hears those shots from the rooftop. He leads up to the roof where he finds Sable standing over one dead Hydra agent and one captured. She tells Spider-Man that he's going to deal with the live one there while she goes into the school alone. Inside the school, 8 Hydra agents, including their lieutenant, have several girls held hostage. They also heard the shots from the roof. The lieutenant orders his men to check it out. He also gives the order to kill one of the girls to show them that they mean business. They grab the arm of one of Anna's friends. Now, Anna, that's Silver Sable's niece. So they grab one of the niece's friends and they slash her dead. Defying Sable's order to stay outside, Spider-Man takes to the Hydra agent, or takes out the Hydra agent that was sent to investigate the shots. Sable scolds Spidey for ruining her operation. Meanwhile, Sable's Wild Pack is also en route to her aid. Sandman and Powell, which Powell refers to Sable as a slice of pie in that he wants a piece. Sandman bets him $10,000 that isn't going to happen, and Powell agrees to those terms. Back at the school, Hydra knows that trouble's coming. Sable engages one of the goons in a hallway with some karate chops. Outside the school, Spider-Man does some recon and finds where Hydra is holding the hostages. About that same time, the Wild Pack shows up. Sable is engaging Hydra inside when Powell busts in to provide some backup. Now, she's not excited to see them at all, but she tells him that since he's there to start rounding up the Hydra guys, Spider-Man drops in saying that he's found the hostages. The Hydra lieutenant is becoming desperate, and Sandman is scurrying through the heating ducts. He sees the Wild Pack has things handled, but his concern is with Sable. Speaking of Sable, she and Spider-Man bust in on the lieutenant and his few remaining men. The lieutenant has a gun to Sable's niece's head. Sable knows this Hydra leader. She recognizes him. Spider-Man takes out one bad guy. Sandman drops in on another. Sable uses that distraction to throw one of her chais into the Hydra officer, and he drops his gun. The niece chomps down on his other hand, freeing herself. Sable kicks him into the Sandman and shoves a gun in his mouth. She says she has no qualms about killing a former lover, which Powell overhears. He's like, oh, all right. So there's a chance, he thinks. I don't know. The last page sees captured Hydra agents being led away, captured. Anna, Sable's niece, runs out to Sable only to be chastised by her aunt. She thought she was going to get a big hug, and instead she was like, take me back to Symkaria, and Sable's like, no, stay in school. Sable also chastises Sandman and the rest of the Wild Pack for their unsanctioned, unofficial mission. I think she docks him some pay, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But that kind of sums it up, the issue. Any particular scene I missed? I don't think so. I kind of went through it pretty quickly. It's a quick moving story.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
We do get a bit of Silver Sable. We get a bit of her backstory. We don't really get a lot of, other than Sandman and Powell, there's really not much to the Wild Pack.
Right.
At this point, I know that as the series continues on, they do have more named characters who join. I think there's a guy called Crippler and a Battlestar, and so there are other named characters that will join. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, this was... I was glad to see Sandman in this, because this was during a point where Flint Marko was trying to get his life together. Mm-hmm. He was tired of being a villain, tired of getting arrested all the time. He was trying to reform himself. So it's kind of cool to see him trying to...
This is his redemption story.
This is his redemption arc kind of thing. Yep. I was never a huge fan of Silver Sable, per se, until, again... as we talked about in the Taskmaster episode, the Spider-Man video game on PlayStation. Yep. She plays a big part in it.
Okay.
Towards the third act. But to me, it was kind of like, did we really need another Mercenary super team task force kind of thing. But again, it was the 90s. That was kind of
there was quite a bit of this kind of stuff going on. I do like when they can mix, superheroics with kind of espionage. Mm-hmm. I think that's always very cool. I will say, from the cardstock cover with the foil to the guest appearance by Spider-Man, the Hydra cannon fodder, like, this is just very typical 90s Marvel comic.
Yeah.
It's just such a typical 90s comic. Especially early 90s, before they got really bad. She is a tough, no-nonsense mercenary. She does come across as like a cold, consummate professional, which I think that's something cool to explore, especially since we see from this issue that there's more to that, or there's more to her than that. And so it's easy to see, why she would have occasionally played the villain in some of those older, previous Spider-Man stories.
Right.
I think she's got a very cool look, which surprisingly covers her from the neck down. And that's not something that you saw a lot of in Marvel 90s, super heroines.
Yeah.
So she's fully clothed, which I think is good. Which around a guy like Powell, you're going to want to be fully clothed.
Yeah,
it seems. With the guest appearance in them, with most of the guest appearances from Spider-Man, they're always pretty useless. Like, he really didn't do much in this story.
I think a lot of times they just used him to sell the comic.
100%. But I would have much rather seen maybe some of the Wild Pack having stowed away on the ship, on the jet with her.
Yeah.
Instead of taking a separate jet hours later and getting there before anything's resolved. I mean, the timing of it didn't make sense. And I would have much rather seen maybe Sandman and Powell stowed away on board. Because really, those were the only two you needed anyway.
Yeah.
So take Spider-Man out of it. Just have Sandman on the cover. I think would have been very cool. So yeah, he was useless. I would have much rather seen more time spent to kind of fleshing out the Wild Pack as a supporting cast. I mean, what we know is, from Sandman, we know that he kind of has this protective thing over Sable where he wants to make sure she's okay. It's his idea to even go after her, or that she'd gone off on her own and he wants to kind of go protect her. He's concerned for her when he's, at the school. And so that'll be something that I'm sure is explored as the series continues. And if not, that's a missed opportunity. It should have been.
Right.
So, yeah, Sandman, like you said, he's bad guy trying to turn himself around. So he's very easy to root for. He also gives the Wild Pack some superhuman abilities, which is kind of cool. Powell, on the other hand, he's the creepy scumbag type. He's so cringy. He's so very cliche too. In terms of like the typical 90s alpha male misogynist, very rapey vibes. Like he's a cringy character.
Yeah.
Considering the Wild Pack name is in the title, like I said, I would have liked to have seen more of them or more of a focus on them. We just got a little bit of it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, it kind of the beginning kind of balances with the end in terms of, like so many other number ones where it's like, this is the training, this is the danger room, this is the training, and then here's the real mission, kind of thing. So again, very standard that way. The story itself is very straightforward. It's very much a done in one, and that was kind of one of my biggest issues with this issue. There wasn't really a lot of dangling subplots going on, unless you count Powell's mission to try and bag Silver Sable.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really enough here for me to be like, oh, I really need to read issue 2.
I agree with that. There wasn't really much of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Anything to say like, oh, stick around because, we're going to get to the bottom of this eventually.
They wrapped everything up very nicely, almost as if, if issue 2 never comes out, you guys will be all right.
It kind of reminds me of like some of those like episodic like crime drama kind of things that were pretty popular in the 90s or started
Monster
to be.
of the Week type X-Files episode. Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, because of a lot of that, I did buy this issue when I was a kid. I never picked up the rest of the series. I I ended up getting it as an adult. I think I bought an entire the entire run of it. It was cheap on eBay several years ago. So I'm pretty sure I've got all the issues now. I still haven't gone back and read all the issues.
Yeah.
After reading this, I'm like, I still don't really care if I go back and read. I mean, I'd have to be like really bored to go back and read all these issues. Well, let's talk a little bit about what came next from the series. This series did run for like 45 issues.
Wow.
It was canceled in 1995. There was a limited series in 2006 that was called Sable and Fortune, and so that was her, and then Dominic Fortune was the other character in that. I had never read any of that. That was supposed to be a 6-issue series, but ended up getting cut down to 4.
Oh.
Usually when that happens, it tells me not to bother reading it.
Right.
Other than that, she's had guest appearances in books like Heroes for Hire, Amazing Spider-Man, Punisher War Journal, and then most recently she was in the Venom War event in a title called Lethal Protectors, which I haven't read. The Venom War is kind of one of those things where I was like, I'm going to skip all this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I'm going to skip it. I'm not a big symbiote fan when it comes to less is more for me when it comes to those things.
Yeah.
So I skipped all that. I do love the name of a title called Lethal Protectors, though. That's a pretty dope name. Overall, I think Sable she's a good character. I think she's got a lot of potential, especially if you put her in the hands of a capable writer. Again, you've got the whole hardened mercenary exterior, but she really does kind of care about things on the inside. There's some cool things to play with there. Plus, like I said, I love when you can mix superheroics and like spy shit together. Like that's why
if it works well, it makes a great comic.
That's why I love, like, give me a Captain America Winter Soldier-esque Silver Sable movie.
Yeah.
Or series, and I think that could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or even another, maybe not ongoing comic series, but I think that definitely another mini series I think could be cool, especially since when you've got a character like this who's been around for 40 years, but really, when I talk about what came next, I summed it up in like 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot there. So she's kind of a blank slate in a lot of ways, where a writer could come in and do pretty much anything they wanted.
Yeah.
And if it's good, they could probably get away with it. And I think that's a cool idea in and of itself. I would rather, me as somebody who's, at times been an aspiring writer, would rather write a character like Silver Sable versus a Spider-Man.
Well, and I can't speak 100% accuracy to this, but to me, Symkaria is one of those, like fictional countries in the MCU,
like a Latveria.
or in the Marvel universe or whatever.
Wait, hold
that
on.
doesn't get
Is
as
Latveria real or is Latvia real? Which is the real country?
Latveria is
that's the Dr.
fake
Doom country.
One. Latvia is real.
Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
But Symkaria, I don't feel like gets much coverage.
Yeah.
As opposed to Latveria, Wakanda, Genosha, those kind of places. So I mean, you could do a lot with that. The main thing I know of is that they're like basically independently wealthy.
Yep.
So they could help with like a major crisis, but I don't think they ever really get called up.
Well, and they're so wealthy because of the jobs that she's taking on, because of the Wild Pack, the mercenary work that she's doing is kind of what funds the country.
Right.
I will at some point probably go and read the rest of the series. I could probably knock it out in a day.
I'm sure you could. Yeah.
Just, thumb through them real quick.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I said, there wasn't enough for me to want to pick up any more of it. Just even upon reading this, I was just like, all right, cool, I'm good.
Yeah.
So unlike some of the other issues we talked about, where I'm like, like when we talked about Taskmaster a couple weeks ago,
or
a couple episodes ago, or even Secret Six last week, where it's like, okay, I want to know what happens next.
Right.
I want to pick this up.
This was, and again, I mostly know her from the Spider-Man, from reading the, Spider-Man issues back to back and stuff like that. I'd be okay with just seeing her every once in a while. I don't need a series, but, again, I don't know what they've done with the character since the early 90s.
It doesn't sound like much.
Right.
So,
but like good, again, like you said, a good writer could make all the difference.
For sure. Yeah. I maybe, if that Lethal Protectors, when that comes out in a trade, if it's not out already in a trade, I might pick that up and thumb through it or take a look at it if and see. Maybe see where she's at today. So Cool. All right. Well, that's all we got on Silver Sable #1. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can reach us on Facebook at the #1 podcast. Just the #1 podcast. You can send us an email at the #1 comic podcast at gmail.com. I'm going to get all this right someday.
No, that's all good.
As always, thanks to everyone at the Field of Geek Network for helping make this happen. Thanks to Josh for all he does behind the scenes with this. Appreciate everything. Thanks to Raven Xavier for the awesome theme. And we'll see you next time. Have a great night, everybody.
See ya.